What is justice? I mean, really, when we use the word justice, what is it that we're actually trying to convey? What is it that we're trying to explain to people? I would say most of the time when we use the word justice, we're not actually using it as justice. We're using it as what we think justice should be. So we have this idea in our brain of the way things should be. And most of the time, the way things should be is based on our own level of comfort. In other words, what is going to be the least disruptive to what I want? And that is, if we're being honest, that's usually what we define justice as. And so justice for others doesn't usually translate very well into that. And it also makes us hesitant towards change, towards doing something different because, well, again, it disrupts our status quo. And so I want you to think about that definition of justice as we read the start of Jonah chapter 4. Because if you remember, we've been up to this point. Jonah has disobeyed God. He tried to get away from God. It didn't work very well. Jonah ended up in the belly of a large fish. He prayed this prayer of praise to God. It's a beautiful prayer. It's a prayer of, God, I promise that if you let me out of here, I'm going to worship you. I'm going to tell people, proclaim people your word. Sure enough, Jonah got out, got to go do that. And the people of Nineveh heard the smelly, wrinkly, lactic acidy looking dude, not lactic, but you know what I mean, stomach acidy looking dude, and they believed him. And then it says at the end of chapter 3 that the Lord heard the cries of the people of Nineveh and he relented. So then we get to chapter 4 verse 1, but to Jonah this seemed very wrong and he became angry. Why did this seem very wrong to Jonah? Jonah doesn't really give an explanation, sort of. Well, in verses 2 through 3, he prayed to the Lord, "Isn't this what I said, Lord, when I was still at home? This is what I tried to forestall by fleeing to Tarshish. I knew that you were a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity. And now, Lord, take my life, for it's better for me to die than to live." Wow. Jonah, based on what you're reading here, Jonah hated the Ninevites. I mean, he loathed them. And in our sense of justice, I mean, why not? I mean, we talked about this. The people of Nineveh, I said Tarshish, the people of Nineveh were not nice people. They were bad people. They did horrible things. And yet here's a God who really, of all the people, let's be honest, the Assyrians were probably the most hated people of the day at this point. And yet here's a God who is relenting and is showing them grace and mercy. And Jonah hates it. He absolutely hates the fact that God has grace on these people. It offends Jonah's sense of justice. It offends the idea that God, these are bad people, and because I have decided these are bad people, they should be punished. They should be destroyed. They should not be saved. But God replies, "Is it right for you to be angry?" Wow, that's a serious question. And it's not just, is it right for you to be angry? It's, do you have a right to be angry? Let me give you an example. This morning, I took my daughter to school, and the weather was a bit gamey outside, a bit rough, and she was like, "Wow, I'm glad I'm getting a ride to school. If you hadn't given me a ride, I would have demanded a ride to school." And I just kind of looked at her and I said, "You would have demanded or begged?" And she's like, "It's the same thing." I said, No, it's not the same thing. You see, demanded implies that you have a right, that you are the person in authority. Begged recognizes that you are not the person in authority. Which one is Jonah? Is Jonah the one in authority? Or should Jonah beg to the one who has authority? Well, we know the answer because we saw Jonah kind of beg previously in chapter 2. Jonah has forgotten that this is the creator of the universe. It's almost like the Job deal, where God says, hey, raise your hand if you were here at the beginning of time and creation. Anyone? Anyone? Job? Your hand's not raised. This is God saying, do you really have a right to be angry? Which I think is a great question for all of us. More on this tomorrow.